Yeah, that's right. We'll show you in just a talks about the various reactions we've had from the statement from the national government. There's been quite a talk surrounding this issue, anti-mugging squads, and indeed sentiments from the members of the public, Sophia.
Yes, in the recent past, several muggings in broad daylight, the brazen manner in which these thugs would conduct themselves, attacking a woman, bringing her down, taking her belongings, and they were targeting individuals leaving ATMs, forex bureaus, as well as M-Pesa shops. And as I mentioned, in broad daylight, in front of other people, they'd operate in several groupings. And so, of course, this caused a lot of outrage. Yvonne and the Nairobi County Governor, that's Mike Mbuvi Sonko, one of his reactions to this was that his political detractors and rivals were hiring this youth to paint him in bad light, to execute these muggings, to paint him in bad light, to show him to be a failure. That is one of the reactions we got from him. Thereafter, he said that a team of anti-mugging squad is what he described it as, was being formed alongside the police unit. And there were several questions asked about that. Who are these people that he's talking about that will be working with the police, and as far as this squad is concerned, under what law, what mandate, jurisdiction, if you like. So several questions around that, but he did say that team had been put in place. What we also know so far is that 3 of these suspects have been gunned down, have been killed by officers who have been patrolling the streets in the last couple of weeks. But also the Member of Parliament, Starehe, and this is the CBD falls within his constituency, also came out to speak about this matter, and he described the CCTV cameras that have been installed in various parts of the capital as useless. Remember, Yvonne, millions of shillings were spent to install these cameras. However, on numerous occasions, like in these instances, we've seen these muggings or other crimes, even murders, the question of what happened to the footage, what happened to the cameras that had been installed at great expense. And it was a multi-agency as well effort with the mobile service provider as well as the police. So that being put into question, and what Jaguar is asking for is an audit of the CCTV cameras to actually find are Kenyans getting value for money? Is this system actually serving Kenyans, and is it benefiting the residents of Nairobi the way it should, the way it was intended? Because in cases even when there is CCTV footage, most of it is blurry. You can barely make out the images therein. So the Member of Parliament, Starehe constituency, asking for that audit, and he also citing joblessness as one of the key areas that must be addressed, saying some of these youth that are mugging individuals across the CBD is because they have nothing to do. And so some of those reactions we're getting, Yvonne, so far.
Yes, indeed, taking a political twist, but also trying to address the root cause of everything that we're seeing. I mean, and Sophia, this is coming at an interesting time. At the start of this year, we saw a sharp rise in the cases of muggings and crime in the city centre, coming in the new year, right after a long electioneering period in 2017, many hoping that things can get back to normal really quickly to enable businesses pick up after, the slow growth that was experienced in 2017.
Yes, these recordings of maggings in the CBD have not helped the economic stature of the county. This is the capital. This is where the biggest, if you like, in as far as revenue goes in terms of producing as well the same. You have that coming from Nairobi. So a critical part of the country, and as far as the counties, many had hoped businesses, as you mentioned, would go back to normal. Life would continue in terms of people going by their business. So the most worrying part of this is, as I said earlier, the brazen nature of these young men and women, and we've heard that stories of how they will actually, bring somebody down and even tear pieces of their clothes because they have to report to show they actually were party to this particular incident, to whoever it is they're reporting to. So this not good, not a good look, not good for the security of Nairobians and for Kenya's economy in general. A lot of hassle and issues have been there in the past couple of months. So there must be seen going forward, indeed, the agencies coming together, whether it's county government, the ministry, the Interior Ministry, you have the police, the IG, not only to make these statements, but for action to actually be seen and for this to come to an end so that life can resume to normal.
Indeed. Thank you, Sophia, joining us from the city centre. Talking about the recent spate of insecurity and crime within the city centre, and indeed talking about this being a concern for Kenyans over the last few months. Thank you, Sophia. I want to now take a quick look at the data from that opinion poll by Toweza East Africa. Sophia had alluded to that a little bit. I want to just show you what that data looks like, what the numbers look like, and starting with those that were surveyed, over 1,000, a little over 1,700 of them asked what they believe to be the major threat to security in the country, not just in the capital today. 37% rather optimistic, saying no major threat. But look at this, 24% talking about theft. And if you will recall, as Sophia rightly put it, this survey was done back in September and October of 2017. And that tells you that obviously this was something that had just started to emerge then, and we're just perhaps seeing it now. 9% said they're worried about youth unemployment, which might be directly related to theft. 8% talking about livestock and cattle rustling as being a major threat to security in the country. And of course, the fear of what is happening and what's keeping the young people occupied. People being asked, well, why would Kenyans join radical groups? Half of them say cite lack of employment. And of course, there's the promise of easy money as well. Peer pressure comes in at a distant third, with just 3% talking about peer pressure being the reason why they would do so, and 2% quoting good governance. Now, when it comes to how they feel about the police and whether they handle all of these cases, and we'll get to who they report to first. But here it is. The police who are charged with enforcement of the law across the country, are people satisfied? Less than half of the people are satisfied with the response they get from the police, with 33% being dissatisfied. So that's about a third of those that were surveyed. So, and of course, it looks like it is the police that many report the crime to first, 66%. And remember, so out of the 66%, then you have over less than half who are happy with that response. Another 21% go to their village chairs, and 3% go to the administrative officer. 3% actually don't report these issues. But here's something that might talk about and might address the issue of the dissatisfaction with the police when it comes to this data. And this is why. The thing about different rules for different folk. Who will likely face justice after committing a crime? In other words, who would be the first to be jailed? 88% of those who were surveyed said, for sure, if an ordinary citizen were involved in a crime, they would most likely face justice. 50% for a religious leader, so thinking perhaps the religious leaders are put on a pedestal, with 36% believing that it would be a public servant. So just taking a look at the scales of justice there, who would likely be put in jail first? Here's another one. It goes on. A police officer 25% believe a police officer would likely face justice after committing a crime. And the numbers go lower and lower, which tells you there's a certain sense or feeling of impunity that there's certain people in the country who get away with crime. Politicians, rich and wealthy people, and senior government officials coming at the bottom of that list. So let's understand this survey a little bit more by speaking to the man whose organization conducted this study, and that is Victor Ateng. He's a senior program officer at Twaweza East Africa, and he joins me now on phone. Victor, good evening.
Good evening, Yvonne.
Great. Now, let's start by asking, the spate of muggings and crime has been seen to have spiked in the month of January. But you conducted this study way back a few months ago in September, October.
That's
Why?
right.
Was this a trend that you had seen starting to emerge even just a few months ago?
So at Twaweza, we are not surprised today that we have reports in Nairobi about criminal gangs doing all the things they're doing. Our survey conducted in September, October reveals that citizens are concerned with the issue of theft as one of the major threats, security threats within their neighborhoods or whichever places they operate from. So this is coming out now for many citizens may not be a big surprise. And indeed, what we also realize that for most Kenyans, everyday crime and policing issues remain more significant in their lifestyle, the kind of large-scale attacks that attract national and international headlines, for example, what we have probably seen with terror attacks. So this is everyday experience for many Kenyans.
Yeah, certainly, I think you, like you said, were not surprised by what you saw happening in the country at the start of this month. You'd started to see this trend emerging from last year. But I suppose something that came out of the survey may not have been a surprise is the citizens' perception of lack of equality before the law, seemingly ordinary citizens being held to account for the crimes that are committed. But what else stood out for you from this study?
Well, what else? You're right. For many Kenyans, the perception that getting justice there's a big divide when it involves somebody of high standing in the society than another. That it's not a new thing for many of them, because we say in research, perception is reality. These are everyday experience, and if you ask them who probably they know who has been sent to jail for white-collar crime, they will probably just not count more than 3. But if you ask them about everyday crime and who has been sent to prison or who has been convicted, I think they will have hundreds and hundreds of names they would produce. So again, that is not something that should surprise us. Now, what we probably we should be finding interesting is the fact that for a long time we have blamed the youth joining. We have blamed Islamic radicalization for the reason why young people would join radical groups. But what Kenyans think, and probably based on what they have experienced in the neighborhoods, is the fact that unemployment is the biggest contributor.
Yeah.
So we solve the issue of unemployment or income in this country, and it helps fight the issue of radicalization. So that is one of the things that we see coming out in this survey.
Okay, Victor, as always, when I have a conversation with you, once your data comes out from the various surveys you do, I always ask you this question, and I'm going to ask it again. What do we do with this data, with this information that's come out? How do we use it? What's its usefulness to us as a country? What does it tell us? How should it inform what happens going forward?
Well, this data is good data. This is data that we can discuss for the next 6 months with the policymakers, with the Interior Ministry, with entrepreneurs in this country, because we are looking at, for example, unemployment being cited as the main contributor to crime. So we need to ask, for example, what is the international trade policy? Are we importing more rather than manufacturing so that we can create job opportunities for our young people? You know, so it is a report that should be discussed, not can be, but should be discussed by across the board. You know, again, for the police, we should be asking ourselves, what is it that we need to do to improve the level of satisfaction by citizens? Because indeed, there are those who are not satisfied. What is it that they need to do? We have seen them talking about the police paying bribe as the main reason why they're not satisfied. But then there are also other factors. So there's a lot that we should be looking forward to when discussing this report. Can we introduce new bills to improve police operations? Can we introduce new bills and laws that will help improve our trade practices that promote local manufacturing that will spur the economy and create income opportunities for our young people? Because a lot of these issues are also determined by resources or local resources. The other thing is probably what we need to be asking ourselves is, are our police forces, is the police force equipped well enough? Because one of the things we see is that it takes up to half an hour for majority of Kenyans to reach the nearest police station. Now, we should ask ourselves as a country, what is the policy with regard to, what are the standards we need to set for our country? Because we have all these service charter things that every government department has introduced. When I call a hotline, a police hotline, within how many minutes, seconds should it be responded to? And within how many minutes should a police officer be within my doorstep? And if it is not within my doorstep, if I wanted to walk to the nearest police station, what is the policy? Within how many minutes should I walk and get there? Is it 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 hour? So those are the things that this report should be helping us talk about. Because I see the leadership has been talking about transforming livelihoods. So how are we transforming livelihoods?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. Some great questions that we will be putting to our guests tonight. Thank you, Victor Rateng from Twaweza, East Africa, on this study that tells us already what we have been seeing in the news lately, but then also reminding us that this has been an issue of concern to many Kenyans, not just the residents of Nairobi County, over the last few months or so. Okay, so let's talk about this data. Let's talk about the situation in Nairobi, in the country as a whole. My guest tonight on The Big Story, George Msamali, who's a security expert, well-versed with police operations, was a trainer at the GSU Training School for a number of years. Also, Honorable Didmus from the Security Committee in the National Assembly. Gentlemen, thank you for being on The Big Story tonight. Mheshimiwa, I would like to begin with you. What's your sense as a member of the Security Committee with this study that we're seeing, with the cases of muggings that we have been seeing in the country? What's your sense about what's going on?
Yeah, thank you, Yvonne. I think what is going on is completely regrettable, that people who are working very hard in this city, who are doing business, others who are on their daily ups and downs to earn a living, they're being terrorized by criminal gangs, by muggers, is completely unacceptable. And I think if we want to talk about how we can ensure that the city and the Kenyans are safe, we need to look at we need to look at this matter holistically in terms of the police training, which I don't think they get enough and sufficient training for them to be able to succeed in fighting crime in this country. I'm talking about specific training that is done based on lessons learned. We need to have, some department in the police force that will do the monitoring about the changing of the crime trends. They will even monitor the individual performance of the police officers. Those who maybe will take case to court and they are unable to prosecute them satisfactorily. You may have collect such a data which can be used as a tool for continuous improvement in terms of shaping the curriculum and the coursework for the training, which is very important.
Okay.
Another thing that I think is important is that...
Carry on, please.
Another thing that I think is important is when you look at we need to relook at the policies on police vetting. I think what is happening now is not sufficient to be able to come up with a conclusive report in terms of who is more suitable police officer and which one is not suitable. Because I've seen previously before, you'll see the National Police Service Commission checking the bank statements of the individual police officers. But I think vetting for suitability should go beyond just checking the bank statement to see whether the police officer is corrupt or not. For example, we must have an electronic file management system where each and every police officer who is involved in investigations of any particular cases, we may have those cases recorded and of course their outcome. So for example, when you are being vetted, they need to have a report. If, for example, you investigated 130 cases, but you only managed to successfully prosecute a case of maybe petty crimes, drunk and disorderly, and you also look at the cases which they were not properly prosecuted, properly investigated, in terms of whether the perpetrators or the suspected persons involved were rich fellas, then you can be able to determine that such kind of a police officer is not suitable to hold office as a police officer. But if you just go to look into other things in terms of the bank statements, you miss the point.
Okay, so
and also another thing that is also very important.
All right, let me jump in for just a moment, because you're talking about data availability of that. To your knowledge, is there any data that exists? You sit in the security committee. I'm sure you come across reports, you know, even in the short term that you have been in office since August of 2017. But to your knowledge, Honorable Didmus, is there any data that informs policy, trends, standard operating procedures for our security officials?
Yeah, those that exist, they are completely outdated. They are very old procedures, which I think they are not in line with the current crime patterns in this country. And also we have a poor monitoring of these police operations by the senior police officers. I mean, I think the junior police officers who are mostly involved in investigations, you know, they are just doing those cases on their own. Unless when you see the senior police officers, you know, monitoring, then they have monetary, you know, monetary interests in terms of they want to protect the perpetrators, or they want to either to aid such kind of suspected persons off the hook. So what I'm saying that we must have the records on how individual police officers are doing, whether you are transferred to Mandera, whether you are transferred to Nairobi, we can be able to track your performance down the last 10 years to see whether you are just sleeping on duty, whether you are just using the police uniform for personal gains in terms of soliciting for bribes to aid criminals out of the hook or not.
Okay, I want us to take a break, but let me just bring in George Msamali before we do that. George, what's your sense? You're a security analyst. You've worked with the police and the security officials. What, in your view, is happening?
Even for a fact, we are just putting too much focus on police performance, forgetting that for crime to happen, we have a cocktail of factors that actually help crime to escalate. And if we put so much focus on the police, forgetting that there are these other factors, then we are losing the ball.
What are those factors, George?
I mean, we look at the environment, we have emerging trends of crime, we have the different dynamics, youth and unemployment, we have radicalization of the youth. I mean, we just need to look at it holistically. And then when we look at the police, focus on the police and say, yes, these are the emerging trends, and the challenges and the dynamics that are coming up are this. How do we equip the police to deal with these emerging trends?
All right.
I think let's not focus so much on the police, forgetting that there are other factors that are actually contributing to the escalation of crime.
Are you able to get into some details about, you know, those other contributory factors, you know, to what's going on now? We've just come out of an election. In fact, this survey was done a month after the general election in August 2017. I mean, perhaps it's reaching, but this was at an election time when we had been told that security had in fact been beefed up around the country to secure the electoral process. And then this happens, what, just about a month after that. What do you think, you know, has caused this sudden spike, if you like?
Even we've been having this problem for quite some time. And I think the euphoria that we're witnessing now is because of that clip that went viral of an individual being mugged within the CBD. We've been having this from 2000. And this is the first time when we had a special police force formed. We codenamed it the Rhino Squad to deal with cases of mugging within the CBD. And the officers that were deployed to this were particular officers that had been selected, officers that were well-versed in, martial art. They could deal with these muggers. But now we are focusing so much because this has gone viral and there's a lot of a cry from the public saying that we are now being mugged. The issue here is that so many of these cases have been happening and they've been going unreported. So I believe that we need to do much more. For example, the business environment within the CBD. We're having an influx of hawkers all over the CBD. We have the matatu people.
All right, we will get to that in just a moment because you're now starting to talk solutions. But I want us to take a break. When we come back, we'll delve a little bit more into the solutions. And George Musamali just painting a picture that this is nothing new, just that one clip went viral. Is this the reality that Kenyans are living, not just in Nairobi, but across the country? Just hasn't been reported. Stay with us here on The Big Story. The hashtag to use is The Big Story on social media. We're tracking your feedback at KTN News, at Yvonne Okwara, George Musamali, security expert, and Honorable Didmus Baraza, who's a member of the Security Committee in Parliament, are both still with me. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, including that anti-mugging squad that's been reportedly formed by the Nairobi governor. We'll be right back. The big story tonight is the rising cases of theft and crime in the country, and just what's coming out of Twaweza, East Africa, with that survey further telling us what we have always known. And we're asking you what your experience has been with insecurity. The hashtag is The Big Story. I'm seeing some of your feedback. It'll be displayed on our screens, and I'll be getting into some of it and posing that to my guest tonight. But let's look at those numbers again. There they are. Out of those that were surveyed, 4 have had something stolen for them in the past 6 months, and 1 out of 3 in the last year. So has this been your experience? Please use the hashtag The Big Story at KTN News, at Yvonne Okwara, and let's try and get to the bottom of this and understand just what is going on. My guests once again tonight on The Big Story, George Musamali, who's a security expert, as well as Honorable Didmus Baraza, who's a member of Parliament for Kimilili. He's also a member of the of the Security Committee in the National Assembly. George, I want to pick up from where we left off. You said that this is something that's been happening in the country for a while, but I'm not sure we've seen it to this scale. It is blatant, it is audacious, and it is also well organized. This is not the petty theft of somebody picking your pocket. These guys are organized, they move in large groups, they target individuals, they're reported to have trailed them. Even if you take a look at the KCB bank heist that took place last year, very well-educated persons, they dug a tunnel, for quite some distance to get there. I mean, this is not your ordinary petty theft, though.
Even for a fact, this is something that has been happening. And as I said earlier, from 2000. And remember, I mentioned that the police took action and they formed the first squad to deal with mugging within the CBD, and they codenamed it the Rhino Squad. And from my experience, Tomboya Street has been a heaven for mugging. Moi Avenue, along the former Barclays Bank Moi Avenue, Kenyatta Avenue, Haile Selassie Avenue, even Harambe Avenue. These have been hotbeds of mugging. The only thing that has not been happening is that these muggings were not getting media attention. And members of the public sort of were not interested in reporting these matters to the police. And the reason we should be asking ourselves, is it because the police have the public has lost confidence in the police? And the other question that we should be asking ourselves, we've seen from the survey that 66% of Kenyans report to the police first before they go to any other person. So what we need to ask ourselves, after these reports are made, what quality of service do we get? Are these cases investigated to the fullest and people arrested and arraigned in court? And those arraigned in court, do we get convictions? So we are just shouting now because this is something that has gone viral. But in reality, if you talk to most Kenyans, they will tell you that they have experienced this almost for more than 20 years. And I think it's time now that we look for a lasting solution, as opposed to now just revamping a team that was already on the ground doing the same job.
Okay, and some of those solutions, Honorable Didmas, are coming from top leadership of Nairobi County. And I'm referring to Sonko's statement, that's the governor of Nairobi County, that he's forming an anti-mugging squad that will work with the police. A number of people are worried about this. Its mandate, its constitution. Who are they? Are they individuals who are trained in terms of law enforcement and security operations, working with the police? What are your thoughts on this anti-mugging squad by the Nairobi County governor?
I think, Yvonne, the police should not just focus on arresting and prosecuting those muggers. But the long-term goal should be to put in some modalities that will ensure they prevent such crimes before they happen. And I'm completely worried because Msamali understands that this hotspot for muggers are well known for very many years. So what are the police doing? As much as I will agree partly with Msamali that we need not just to focus on the police, but I want to tell him that the ultimate goal to ensure that Kenyans are safe, the Kenyans are secure, rests with the National Police Service. And it's the National Police Service that should go ahead, that should stretch their hands beyond the normal in terms of understanding how they are going to work together with the private sector to ensure that Nairobi and this country is safe. And as much as they are constitutionally, they are in charge of security of this country, we will continue to blame them.
Yes, okay,
For example, in terms of deploying police officers for patrol.
Mheshimiwa, allow me to jump in, please, because my question was specifically on the anti-mugging squad that's reportedly been formed by the Nairobi County governor, because you've rightly put it that those that are given the constitutional mandate to keep Kenyans safe, that is the police, and that the focus should be there. But what are your thoughts on Sonko's anti-mugging squad? Some Kenyans are concerned. As a member of the Security Committee in Parliament, what are your thoughts on that? Are you concerned as well?
I think I want to laud the governor for appointing that anti-mugging squad. But for that anti-mugging squad to be effective, they must go through training. And I think what Sonko should do is to hand over that mugging squad to be under the command of the National Police Service, so that they can be able to discuss together, come up with a working together formula for it to be much more effective. They can even share the formula and see how they are going to secure this city. But if they are going to work differently, you have the police who have their own formula of working, then you have the civilians. I will say the Sonko anti-mugging squad, these are just civilians because I don't think they are trained police officers.
Okay.
So I think unless we look into their training and their expertise, it can just be an exercise in futility.
All right, so let's talk about the root causes of this, because I know you've mentioned quite a bit about the police, but even from this survey, many people are citing lack of employment, the promise of easy money, at least that's with respect to joining radical groups. But youth unemployment is a big issue. What do you think are the contributing factors, and how do we start to solve the issue? You've talked extensively about the police, but surely it's about other factors as well. Honorable Didmas, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I think we cannot blame unemployment as a reason why we have insecurity, because unemployment will continue even for the next 40 or 50 years. We cannot have a scenario where all Kenyans are employed. I think what we need is the proactiveness of the National Police Service. For example, the government of Kenya spent a lot of money investing in CCTV cameras in this city, and I think the police could have also been on the forefront advising those who are installing the CCTVs on those specific hotspots where, I mean, they can be able to use the CCTV footages to be able to identify and arrest these markers.
Okay,
so just
but certainly, Mheshimiwa, the issue of unemployment is a big one. Do you not think that this is an issue that must be solved? Like you say, you cannot have 100% employment, but surely shouldn't this be something that you would think, if you work towards it and reduce it somewhat and have more people in formal employment or running their own businesses, but are properly occupied, that this would help somewhat to bring the crime rates down? Do you not think that's a major issue?
Yvonne, you see, I am a trained security officer. I'm a trained military officer, and I want to tell you for free that when you are identifying, the problem, the solution to security problems, and you look at the issues of unemployment, which is going, it has been existed for a long time, will continue to be there. So what you do is that you mitigate, you explore other means that will ensure that the Nairobi people are safe, that the Kenyans are safe, regardless of the increasing unemployment. Because if we are going to say that, yes, we know we have, the crime levels has gone up, this is because we have a lot of unemployment, then we are missing the point, because unemployment is not going to end tomorrow. So we are going to have Kenyans who are unemployed going forward. We have street families who will continue to be unemployed. And what the National Police Service could do is to develop other modalities, beef up surveillance systems, increase patrol, whether they will do it in uniforms or in conceal themselves, pose as the city dwellers moving around, be able to arrest those people who are the magas. I mean, that is the way to go.
Okay, it sounds, well, perhaps one would hope for certain extraordinary measures. But I would like to ask you this, as a member of parliament whose work it is to oversight. Kenyan taxpayers spent quite a bit of hundreds of millions of shillings on CCTV monitoring. These crimes are happening right under the noses of these cameras. Their faces are out to be seen. Are you summoning the Inspector General of Police, the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Interior? Are you asking them these hard questions on behalf of Kenyans?
What we are going to do is, I have a lot of confidence in the chairmanship of Honorable Jude Njomo, Member of Parliament of Thika, Kiambu Town. And what we are going to do as a committee, we are going to come up with a formula. We are going to identify actions that within the next 3 years, and we will embark on doing root cause analysis, getting memorandum from a number of security experts and agencies and institutions on how we can improve the security of this country. And if we'll identify, some of the remedies for those problems, if it's through legislations, we'll propose legislations and amendments of the existing laws. If it means reviewing the police operations procedures, we will do so. If it will mean that we summon the Inspector General of Police and several other stakeholders,
so are we likely to see these individuals, just a quick one, before your committee? Hopefully in the next week, even, because
absolutely
this is something that's happening. Okay, all right. Let me listen to George Msamali, because you were talking about a holistic approach towards this, increase of hawkers. I think the county government has made an attempt at banning border operators within the CBD. But what are your thoughts in terms of solutions?
Even we are focusing so much on some aspects of security that are being provided by the government. For example, we are talking about the CCTV systems. And what Kenyans should understand that for that CCTV system to work, we have what we refer to as integrated security management solutions. And when we are dealing with that, we are dealing with 3 Ds, where we need to have deterrence factors, we need to have detection factors, and we need to have denial factors. If one fails, then we're going to have the kind of mess we're witnessing in Nairobi. When we had the CCTVs being inaugurated, we were told that they will work real time. A mugging happens, we have a policeman on the ground, he will be informed by the controller that within your area, there's something that is happening that you need to attend to.
Yes.
They were given radios that could be monitored.
Absolutely.
Are these systems working? Those are the questions we need to ask ourselves. And then we don't need to come up with so complicated solutions to this. Once we've done a survey and realized where we are failing, the gray areas, how do we address this? Let's go to New York. New York had such a problem in the 80s. And when Rudy Guerrero became the mayor, he came up with what he called the broken window policy. Very simple. A crime is happening, deal with it at that moment, there and there.
Yeah.
This is not what we're doing in Kenya. And we are letting small crimes that could have been dealt dealt with at the onset, now snowballing to becoming very big things.
Let's talk about the trust within the police service for just a minute. A lot of people are dissatisfied with it. You talk about the situation in New York, where I think it's know something, say something, I believe is their policy, and that came after 9/11. But I mean, you know, where are we? How do we start to repair this relationship with the police? Surely this is something we have discussed for decades, about the relationship between police and the civilians in order to get information and just to trust that they can actually, you know, give justice. What's the missing link?
Even this is something that was tackled in, as Agenda 4 in the Krieger report. And we said now we need to have a change on focus, because initially, we used to have the Kenya Police Force. We said now this is going to change into a national police service. They're not going to be a force again. They're supposed to be servants to the people. And we made several gains, and we said that we should have an independent police service. Let's have an Inspector General that is going to be independent. But all these gains were reversed by Parliament. In 2014, when we had the security bill coming up, we made the Inspector General an appointee of the executive. These are the gains that we are now rolling back. And unless we focus on having an independent police service that will go out there and deliver service to the people as per policy, then we will not win this game against crime. Because policemen will just be there, and as it is right now, members of the public have very little confidence with the police. We can't blame the police wholesome, because at some point you look at what you're giving the police for them to give us service. Are we resourcing the police enough? You go to Central Police Station. We have one vehicle that is serviceable. This vehicle is assigned to the OCS. It's supposed to do patrols within the city. It's supposed to do administrative work for the OCS. Is that enough for a station like Central? Look at the policemen. Do we give them resources to facilitate investigations? We don't, and that is why you'll find 66% report these matters to the police,
but
and nothing happens.
Satisfied.
It just becomes statistics at the police station.
Okay, I think we'll leave it at that, and we've clearly understood where you're coming from, the holistic approach. We thank you, George Msamali, who's a security expert, Honorable Didmas Barazo, who's a Kimilili Member of Parliament, and Mheshimiwa, we look forward to seeing you know, those in charge of security in this country before your committee sooner rather than later. I'm not sure Kenyans can wait too much longer, but we thank you for your time here on the show tonight. Hashtag the big story. Dan Alila, mugging in the cities as a result of runaway political gangs affiliated to political parties, with political lords being their sympathizers. Peter Oteng says the anti-mugging thing will be a very, very big blow to the Nairobi residents. Imagine having a squad which is not registered. This will be another insecurity case in the country. Wangila, you seem to feel the same way. Tony K Money, you say the only thing that can manage CBD security is manning the streets and not patrols. If a uniformed officer is strategically placed on every street corner, no crime will occur, as they'll be held culpable. Philip Mwamirizi, finally, you partly concur with George. You say it's not the rise in crime or how to handle it, but the cause. A lethal cocktail of a large number of youths unemployed using drugs, gambling, politics and corruption on TV, and its byproduct radicalization. My God, the day we added the number of characters on Twitter, we have a lot to say now. Thank you so much for your views, and thank you for your feedback. Listen up, stay safe out there, whether you're in Nairobi or across the country. And we do hope to continue to ask these hard questions of those in charge of our security. Thanks for watching The Big Story this week. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. Have a good night.